Hello underwater photographers, I'm Brent Durand and I shoot a lot of underwater photos. And I am playing the air drums because today we're going to talk about lights, lighting, and why you need to have artificial light underwater when shooting underwater photos and videos. So without further ado, let's dive into the tutorial. This particular video is brought to you by Sea Life, so be sure to check out Sea Life cameras and Sea Dragon underwater lighting systems at your local dive shop. Let's cue the intro. So underwater lighting, it's a huge topic and something that no professional underwater photographer, videographer will ever master. It's a constant learning experience, but the basics dive into why we need to use lighting underwater. And I get a lot of questions. I see a lot of questions online, in forums, during workshops, and in a number of different places about what can I do to improve my photography? What sort of camera can I buy? Can I just throw money at the problem and like make my photos better with a better camera? It's like, well, without proper lighting, you can do anything you want and the photos aren't going to get a lot better. Adding light to your camera system is essential to really get those photos that you're seeing online that are well lit, they're bright, they have vibrant color, they have shadows, contrast, they're clear, you have nice subject eye contact, and all of those really fantastic photos. So lighting is step number one. So the reason we need artificial light for shooting photos and video underwater is because of the light fall off as we go deeper. So we all learned about this in our open water certification, which is that we lose color as we descend, starting with the channel red and progressing through different colors as we go until eventually you get to no light and everything is just going to be black down there underwater. So by using an artificial light, we start to bring out those colors that we lost, whether it's reds or oranges or yellows or greens, and really bring that color back so that the photos pop. And for ambient type photos, you tend to not use lighting. So if you're shooting a whale that's really far off or a shipwreck that's also far off, you're not going to use artificial light. But for most other photos, whether they're macro, they're mid-range, or they're wide angle, anything close focus, you're going to want to use either a video light, a constant light, or a underwater strobe, also called a flash. These two types of light sources have some very big differences. You've got the underwater flash, and then you've also got the video light, which is a constant light right here. And just a side note, whenever you're looking at these types of lights in the dive shop or at your local underwater camera retailer, always point them at the ground. Don't hold them up and point them in the eye. And same thing as on a night dive, never flash your buddy in the eye. You can do your okay sign and things like that under the light versus flashing the light at their eyes. With that note aside, let's dive in. Let's talk about the differences between these two light sources and why you need them. So first off, we're talking underwater strobes, and these flash and are hands down the most popular way to shoot still photos because they create this bright flash. And what that does is it is way more powerful than a video light or constant light. So it's gonna deliver bolder colors, stronger contrast, stronger shadow delineation, and other factors for our still photos. It's also a very, very bright light that fires very quickly, meaning it freezes action. So if you have subjects that are moving around, it is able to capture that action and freeze it. So you'll get sharp pupils of eyes and things like that. Whereas if you're shooting with a video light, you might find with a slower shutter speed, even points like backscatter that are supposed to be pinpoints with a flash are going to be blurred through the frame as more close to what you might see in video where it's less noticeable. So the big benefit here is being able to freeze motion and create better, brighter photos with your underwater flash. So this particular flash is a Sea Life Sea Dragon Universal Flash. And what it does is it has a automatic and a manual setting, like most of the strobes and flashes that are out there. So I always recommend to people, try to find a flash or a strobe that has both automatic plus manual. There are a couple beginner-focused strobes that have only automatic settings, but you really want to look for both so that as you graduate from automatic into more manual settings to create your custom effects, you can keep that strobe with you and it's more of a long-term investment. So certainly something I like. You can shoot on both, it's no problem with automatic, also known as TTL, or manual, but look for the strobe that has both. So the way these strobes are fired is through a fiber optic cable, and essentially what that does is transfer light from the camera's onboard flash to the strobe, which then fires. So your camera has a pop-up flash, and as you're shooting, it bursts. This fiber optic cable takes that burst of light, transfers it all the way into the strobe or the flash, and then that fires. If you're shooting on manual, it sends out a little light and that light is transferred and the strobe flashes the amount based on the dial. So you'll see on the Sealife flash, you've got a dial from 1 to 10 plus the automatic. So based on that power setting, the strobe is going to flash according to that power. For shooting automatic or TTL, the amount of light output from the camera will be relayed over to the flash, which reads that amount of light output and will be brighter or less bright to expose the scene properly based on what the camera is telling the flash to do. The camera's metering in that case and trying to determine the best exposure, whereas in manual, you're doing that yourself. So these can be used on any different camera system. So the Sealife Universal Flash can be used on the DC2000, but it can be used on any other compact mirrorless or DSLR camera system that can take a fiber optic cable. There are other systems that use converters to take the flash signal from a camera, turn them into fiber optic, and relay it to the strobe to fire. And those are more commonly found in mirrorless and DSLR housings. And the benefit is that you're not using the pop-up flash, which saves a little bit of camera battery, but you still have the nice ease of use of a fiber optic cable. Lastly, there is also sync cords. So the sync cords take an electronic signal straight from the camera that again negates use of the onboard flash and sends it directly to the strobe via electronics, and that electronic signal tells the strobe to flash and fire and what intensity to use. So a number of different ways to trigger the strobes, and this is going to vary depending on your particular system, but very easy to use, and once you get this set up, it's great. The fiber optic cables require very minimal maintenance, which is great when you're doing a lot of diving and trying to set up a system and take it apart very quickly. So let's take a look now at video lights. So for video lights, and let's add one to our system here. There we go. We're attached and ready to shoot video. And generally, video lights are used primarily for video. We turn it on. And here we go, we've got our constant light, so we can shoot for any number of seconds or minutes as we're getting the shot. One of the things I keep in mind is that for most lights out there, the burn time at 100% power is about 60 minutes. So keep that in mind. Try not to keep the light on throughout your entire dive because it will run out of power, especially if you're trying to get through 2 or 3 dives during the day. So something to keep in mind, if you have a nice strong light, like this is the Sealife Seadragon 5000 lumen, that is going to create a lot of power and you might not need to be running the light at full intensity. So turn it on and then you can cycle through the power modes to find the right intensity for what you're shooting. If you're shooting very close to something, you might not need the full power or the full 5000 lumens that the light has in order to light the subject. You might be okay shooting at 2000 lumens. So that's something to consider when choosing your light. Another question I'm asked quite a bit is, do I go with one light or do I go with a 2-light system? So let's say we're going here and we want to take the flash off and we're trying to build a 2-light system. Boom, here we go, 2 video lights. This to me is much better for wide angle. We can adjust the lights out here, and now when we're shooting a reef or something really wide, we've got a nice field of view. We've got our video lights nice and even lighting up the whole scene in front of us, where one light might be a little better if we're trying to shoot macro. So let's pop this off right here. So now we've got a smaller field of view and we've got our one light, so we can be really focused here in what we're shooting with our single light. And it can have any number of lumens that we want because you're shooting very close. The stronger isn't necessarily essential when shooting those. For wide angle, the stronger the light, the higher the lumens. Also relates to the cost of the light, but you're going to get better results because that light's going to be brighter and deliver better color. So it comes down to what you want to do. If you want to go for the one light, if you want to try and go for 2 lights, maybe 2 lower powered lights so you get that nice even wide angle lighting, or maybe you want just the one light that's the most powerful. So, it's up to you. Definitely something to consider in talking to your local dive shop or underwater camera retailer. They'll be able to point you towards the right light for your budget and what you're really looking to shoot. But the nice thing is having that flexibility with the video lights. And just like our strobe, these lights really help bring the light back into the scene. Now, I mentioned shooting a lot of video with video lights, constant lights, but we can also shoot still photos. So with that, we can shoot in automatic or in a manual setting. Let's turn this one on again. And what you're doing if you're shooting automatic is the camera is metering for the light it sees available in front of the camera. If you're shooting on manual, you're the one controlling the exposure of the camera based on what you're seeing through the scene. So this light is constant. It's not like if you were firing the flash that just has a burst of light and you're judging exposure based off of looking at the image or view. You know, this is exactly the way the scene's going to be when you have this light on. So it does make manual exposure easier. With these video lights, you're going to use a slower shutter speed, which could create some motion in certain subjects and things like that. So there's certainly pros and cons to using the video light or the constant light when shooting still photos. So something to consider. Certainly a universal solution in building your first camera system might be to get a single light with a smaller system. And now you're good to go, you know, nice compact. You can clip the system off on your BCD and go from there. So maybe you want one light, maybe you want the two lights, maybe you want a flash and a light because you really want the still photos and the video lights. So, you know, depending on what you want to accomplish, there's a number of different lights with lumen counts at different price points, as well as the flash that lets you capture all of those unique subjects, whether they're photos or videos. So that's pretty much it. We've learned that we really want to have artificial lighting underwater, whether we're shooting still photos or video, and we can go the route of a flash for still photos or a constant light for underwater video or even for photos as well. So there's a lot of choices out there, and if you have any questions, as always, please put them in the comments below. I'll be sure to answer all of them. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe to our channel. Got a lot more tutorials coming at you. And lastly, big thanks to Sealife for sponsoring this video tutorial with all of their lights and gear. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Thanks.